Hello and welcome to Insight. I'm Natasha Jhabhaskar. A day after 25 CRPF jawans were killed in the worst Naxal attack in recent years in Sukma, Chhattisgarh. Alert has also been sounded in neighbouring Jharkhand. The Ministry of Home Affairs has sought a report from the Central Reserve Police Force on what really went wrong in Sukma yesterday. Home Minister Rajnath Singh called the Sukma Naxal attack a cold-blooded murder and said the government will review its anti-Naxal strategy. In the deadliest Maoist ambush in years, 25 men of the Central Reserve Police Force died yesterday afternoon in Chhattisgarh's Sukma area. 6 people were injured. The well-planned massacre was carried out by nearly 300 Maoists. At the time, the 99-member CRPF team was carrying out a sanitization exercise for an under-construction road in the area. Sukma is part of South Bastar, which for decades has suffered the Maoist menace. Since April 2010, nearly 200 security personnel have died in 6 major attacks in Chhattisgarh. It was only last month when 12 CRPF men were killed and 4 were injured in a Naxal ambush in Sukma. The forces were providing security cover for road construction on the Bheji Gorkha Injiram access area. Unfortunately, no lessons were learnt after the March 11th attack. Bureau report. So unfortunately, no lessons were learnt after the March 11th attack this year itself in the same Sukma district. And this is what we are raising today. How should the government deal with Naxal menace, which is becoming deadlier day by day? Joining me on the program today, very esteemed guest, defence journalist from the Tribune, Ajay Banerjee. Thanks very much, Mr. Banerjee, for joining us in this program. Also, former Director General BSF Prakash Singh. Thanks very much, sir, for joining us in this program. Also, Member of Parliament from Rajasthan, who's also served as former DG Rajasthan Police, Harish Meena. Thanks very much, sir, for joining us in this program. Questions we are asking today: is the existing strategy of anti-Maoist operations failing? Why do the Maoists succeed in killing our jawans in large numbers almost every time? What makes the security forces operating in the Maoist hotbed of Bastar so vulnerable to Naxal attack? From Kashmir to Sukma, the CRPF jawans are in the line of fire. What are the new challenges for CRPF jawans? Why does Naxalism thrive? Are there any long-standing issues that need to be resolved? Has the government failed to learn from past mistakes? And where does it end? What are the long-term and short-term solutions? Coming straight to you, Mr. Meena, is the existing strategy of anti-Maoist operations failing in this country? Why do the Maoists succeed in killing our jawans every time?
See, first of all, let me start with, I condemn this dastardly act in which 25 of our brave jawans lost their lives. I condemn it. My sympathies with the family, with the organization. Having said that, I would like to say this problem has to be dealt at 3 levels: at the administrative level, at the operational level, and then finally at the political level. As far as I know, as of now, it is being dealt by the MHA, Ministry of Home Affairs, which is headed by a Home Minister. Below him in the administrative setup, you have a Home Secretary, and then you have a force called the CRPF. The force which is supposed to fight, the jawans who have supposed to fight the battle there in the fields, I presume they have no interaction with the leadership. No Home Minister, no Home Secretary has ever been to the spot and talked to the jawans. So there is a gap. And similarly, we have to engage with the people. Why do people take up to arms? What are their grievances? Are they political? Are they economic? Are they social? And so on and so forth. So it has to be fought at various levels.
So you're saying there's a 3-tier structure where there has to be a comprehensive policy when we talk about tackling the Maoist challenge in the country. Prakash Singh, you have written enormously on this particular issue and you have yourself dealt with the menace of Naxalism. Do you think that in the last few years, somewhere we thought that we are in control of the situation and suddenly it has come back to haunt us? What really happened on March 11th, followed by yesterday's incident? If I can just quote former CRPF Director General DG Dilip Trivedi, he said that CRPF's role in anti-Naxal operations need to be reviewed. There's an urgent need to review the role of CRPF, and the jawans must be given more bulletproof jackets and protective headgear. Why are jawans so vulnerable in these areas?
I would rather, at the very outset you said, is our strategy failing? Look, let us be clear about it. In any anti or counter-insurgency situation, there would always be ups and downs. And if we take an overall view, we are gradually getting on top of the Maoist problem.
Okay.
And there has been a significant drop in the number of incidents. There has been a significant shrinkage in the number of districts affected by Maoist violence. I mean, from about 180 or so, it has come down to 106 today. So, and you can also, if you count the number of surrenders, it's an impressive figure of surrenders. Arrests also significant, and the number of Central Committee members and Politburo members neutralized by the security forces and the intelligence agencies, that is also significant. So, if you take an overall view, we are gradually getting on top of the Maoist problem, and some setbacks in between would always be there, and those setbacks should not upset us, but they should force us to review as to why did the setback happen and take appropriate remedial measures.
In fact, this was also mentioned in one of the answers during question hour from the Home Minister, where he said the number of Naxal cadres killed in 2016 had been the highest ever in 6 years. In fact, the operational efficiency had been around 45% of the central forces.
Kill ratio, as they say, it has been something like 1:3 point something. So, 1 security force personnel killed, 3 Naxals killed. I mean, in 2016, that was the ratio. So, if you take an overall view, I mean, we are gradually, I mean, the scenario is gradually showing improvement, and the Naxals are in the stage of what is called tactical retreat.
They are in the stage of,
and if you examine their documents, they have clearly said that we have suffered setbacks, we are in stage of retreat, but we have to reorganize and we have to respond to the challenges.
So, Mr. Singh, fair enough, you know, even as you say that there has been a decline, there has been a 45% increase in the efficiency of central forces in operations against the Maoists. In fact, in a presentation made by Home Secretary Rajiv Mehershi, he also informed that the number of Naxal cadres killed in 2016, as I was saying earlier, highest ever in 6 years. 84 Maoist cadres were killed in 2015, and in 2016 the number actually swelled to 218. So, from 84 to 218, which is actually an increase of 160%. But my question is, an incident takes place in March and then immediately yesterday. What really went wrong between a month's time? Why the lessons were not learned?
So that's the point I was saying, that every time there is a setback, we need to do an honest introspection. Now, in this particular case, I would say there were multiple failures. I would like to start from the top, from the central government itself. The Director General CRPF retires at the end of February. It's more than 50 days and you have not found a replacement. It's a force of 300,000 men and you make it leaderless. Why? What is the problem? I mean, it's not a mathematical puzzle. You know that this man is going to retire. You know that these are the 5 or 6 people from amongst whom you have to do the selection. What is the problem? You see, once there is no leader at the top, there is always some kind of uncertainty filters down the line up to the command level, up to the battalion level. They don't know whether I will be in this area or I will be shifted, because every new officer has his own this, that. So, I mean, the central government, they should have appointed a DG, and it is, I mean, it is inexcusable that for 50 days you can't find a replacement.
And it demoralizes the spirit of the forces also at all
levels? But it creates some kind of uncertainty down the line, operational uncertainty. And whatever orders emanate from the top, अरे भाई ये तो अभी acting पे हैं, पता नहीं ये order बदल जाए, that kind of feeling is there. Come to the state government. Now, the state government, the kind of support, the kind of intelligence cover with the state government should have been extending. It is not there. It is not there. Now, 25 CRPF men have been killed. I have not heard of a single state government employee or a state police personnel even sustaining injuries. Were they not there, or were there in just 1 or 2, 3 or 4 who managed to run away? So, I mean, the involvement of the state government in these operations, to the extent it should be there, is not there. Why is it not there? See, the problem is with the mindset of the state governments.
Okay.
That mindset is that it is government of India's battle. It is for the central armed police forces to fight. और भाई हम ठीक थोड़ा बहुत हम भी कर लेंगे.
This is exactly what the former DG also, Mr. Meena, in the interview yesterday mentioned. He said that both the central and the state governments must realize that it is essentially a law and order problem. It should be up to the state police to build its capacity. The CRPF should only be used as a strike force. Local police in these areas have completely abdicated their responsibility, and the local police stations who generate a lot of local intelligence, this information is not really percolating down. So on ground, is that a challenge?
I'll give you an example. A couple of days back, there was an incident in Afghanistan. Attack on an army camp. Some terrorists attacked the army camp in which about 140 army men died. Immediately, the defense minister and the army chief resigned. There has to be accountability both at the political level and administrative level. And now you talk of the CRPF. The administrative ministry is the MHA, Ministry of Home Affairs. The present Home Secretary, not even for a day before being appointed as the Home Secretary, has worked in the Home Department either in Government of India or in Government of the state government. A person who does not know his job, what guidance can he give? So there has to be, you have a competent man at a right place. So he can lead the force, he can give guidance. And what we require is more professional thing. It has to be, if it's a law and order problem, deal it at that level. If it's a developmental problem, deal it at that level. But you should have a clear-cut Naxal policy.
Okay.
Now, at the moment, the Naxal division is being headed by the MHA. And MHA, Ministry of Home Affairs, looks after law and order. Do you treat it as purely as a law and order problem? So there are issues involved. Wherever you treat it as a law and order problem, please treat it as one. But if development is required, financial empowerment is required, economic exploitation has to be stopped. This is a holistic approach you have to have, and you fight on all fronts, and I'm sure we'll succeed.
Okay. Mr. Singh, is that also a difficult, terrain in terms of defining the very Naxal problem, calling it a socio-economic challenge or calling it a law and order situation? Should we handle this problem militarily, or should we handle this problem with development initiatives, and which we have seen that, be it the previous government or this particular government, there has been a series of development initiatives, but many of the funds, there are several such figures which say that many of the funds remain unutilized because the administration there in that particular area has not been very forthcoming in terms of utilization of funds. That's first point. Second, in terms of CRPF versus the local police, should it be used as a strike force, or there should be a permanent deployment of CRPF in these areas?
So firstly, I think we should not oversimplify the Maoist problem. It's a very complex problem. It's a very complex problem, and if you go into the roots of it, there are so many. It has so many layers and layers, each of which needs to be understood. There is the poverty factor, there is the unemployment factor, there is the tribal alienation factor, there is the governance factor. All these factors are there. There are the socio-economic grievances, alienation of people. You see, all these factors have together combined to produce this Maoist problem. So we should not, while law and order is the most significant component of it, and which has to be dealt with, but it has also to be tackled at the social level, at the economic level, at the political level, and some kind of a psychological battle has to be fought, winning of hearts and minds. So the anti-Naxal strategy has to be a comprehensive strategy, with a political component, with an economic component, with a cultural component, with a security component, and all these factors. And
will you agree, so far the anti-Naxal strategy hasn't worked on all these components? It has only focused on few areas and not a very comprehensive approach towards tackling the problem?
It is not that the government is not aware of the different components and the different layers of the problem, but when it comes to actually tackling it, what we have seen is that the security forces, in a particular, here they suffered a setback, but there are areas where security forces have done a tremendous job. They have cleared the area of the Maoists. Now, once an area is cleared, what should follow? The administration should move in, the infrastructure should be set up, roads should be built, panchayats should start functioning, schools should start, hospitals should function. So, the various features of administrative net.
So this ad hoc mechanism will not really work. You create a vacuum in governance.
Can you allow me to complete? See, this administrative follow-up It is not happening. I mean, the security forces do their job, then the administration does not follow it up by sort of setting up an infrastructure, and that should follow. Then should follow development. So when there is no administrative structure, the question of development.
So administration follow-up is not happening. Security forces, they do their job, but the sort of vacuum which you create in the governance aspect, that later actually comes back to haunt you. And what we are seeing now is the security forces who are suffering the most. Overall strategy, when we say anti-Maoist strategy, do you think it hasn't really worked? What is not working? Be it if you go by the figures of last year, where it says that there has been a decline in Maoist incidents. What really explains now what happened yesterday and what happened in March?
Ma'am, I'll answer you in two parts. First, let us all get it clear: the nation, the Ministry of Home Affairs, and the media are these. Why give a romanticized name, Maoists? Guys, they're an armed terror group. Let us call them terrorists first. I would request the government of India to actually name them as terrorists. When we use the same word for Kashmiris or in the past for the Punjab problem, why Maoist a romanticized word? They are terrorists, an armed group against the government of India, against the Union of India.
Okay.
So let us first, I would request through this channel, MPs are watching, Honorable MP sitting here, he's from the police also, we should now name them terrorists. Stop this thing of Maoists and Naxals.
Okay.
Secondly, to answer a question, if this attack has happened yesterday, as it happened yesterday, there are two clear things which have happened. One, the way the forces move, there is a way of collecting human intelligence on the ground through local sources, and a way of electronic intelligence, that is through low-flying UAVs, tactical UAVs they are called, and also through a series of sensors. In this case, 300 group of 300 armed people called Maoists got together and attacked a CRPF party. That means there was some kind of intelligence failure on part of gathering information about the collection or the gathering of 300 armed men. This is not to criticize, but this looks like immediately a failure. An immediate response. But however, as we move on, as Prakash Singh sir said about the administrative part, we have made gains. Let us be clear, CRPF has done a very good job. In 2015-16, they've done a very good job. The two-pronged strategy, as Prakash Singh sir has pointed out, one is about development and about law and order, about maintaining law and order. Now comes the part, do they have to be coordinated through MHA? No. There are multiple ministries, as Meena sir was hinting at. There were multiple ministries doing it. Now there is a road ministry, even the BRO, which is under Ministry of Defence, made some road, NHAI made some road, BSNL laid those towers. Do we need a collective response under one common ministry? Possibly the time has come for that, yes, like is happening in Kashmir, like it happened in Punjab in the past. The time has come for that, one collective response, everything comes under that ministry. Where has the development initiative to roll out? Where has that thing to roll out? Where has security first? It has to be under one ministry.
Mr. Meena, is diffused accountability also a challenge? There has to be greater convergence when we talk about, be it information sharing, be it convergence of interest, also leadership. Everything has to be under one umbrella, and that also becomes a challenge?
See, what I like to say is, let's view every incident in a right perspective. If you link this thing with Kashmir agitation or with Punjab agitation, there are different issues. Kashmiris, they don't want to stay in India. Khalistan wanted to secede out of India. This is a homegrown movement of the poorest of the poor, the tribal people. There's no religious angle to it. They don't want to leave India. They don't want to partition of India, and they are not supported by any foreign country. So please, when the disease is different, you have to have a different treatment. Having said that, it is a very serious movement. It is affecting the security of our country, and it has to be dealt at that level. But I feel law and order is a fallout. It's not the cause. The cause is something. Please attend to the basic cause also and deal with law and order also. Please, then only you can have a permanent and a lasting solution. If you view it in piecemeal, you give them better weaponry to the CRPF, you give them whatever you have. You can kill a few people, but you can't kill a movement, you can't kill a thought process. So please.
So there has to be, in terms of what Mr. Meena is pointing out, that it is a law and order challenge, but simultaneously also a socio-economic development challenge, and there has to be a holistic approach in terms of dealing with this. But lack of proper training also of the CRPF battalions, because the way Andhra handled the crisis of Naxals with an elite force like Greyhounds tackling the challenge of a Naxal problem, why Chhattisgarh failed to create an elite force? Because even you have a Cobra elite force, but then there are not many battalions of a Cobra elite force in Chhattisgarh stationed there. So there has to be a strategy in terms of also what sort of an elite force is there in place?
Yes, the the Greyhounds did a tremendous job.
Right.
And I toured Andhra extensively while conducting an inquiry into the assassination attempt of Chandrababu Naidu. And I was told that once the Greyhounds moved in an area, if the Naxals were anywhere near there, they would just clear out. Without engaging the Greyhounds. They knew that it is beyond them to engage the Greyhounds. So if the Greyhounds moved in an area, the Naxals would just run away, clear out of. So that was Greyhound. That was the kind of terror, or, or not terror, but I would say the fear which they inspired. Now the MHA have asked this. I think 6 state governments have been asked to raise similar forces, and I think funds have also been allocated. Training facilities have also been given, but the state governments are not really going about it in a systematic manner. Now forget about the Greyhounds. In Chhattisgarh, there is a counter-insurgency training school at Kanker, where there is one Brigadier Panwar, who has been training the local police. Last time I visited, last time I met him, that was I think more than 5 years back. He said, "Sir, we have trained about 10,000 policemen." Now, look, as a former policeman, I would say that if we have 10,000 well-trained, well-motivated, well-armed policemen, that is more than enough to clear the entire Chhattisgarh of Naxals.
Right.
Why? What have they done with these 10,000 men? When I started inquiring about what happened to these 10,000 men, you see, instead of organizing them into companies or battalions, the force has been just frittered away.
Okay.
Frittered away. 2 आदमी वो नेताजी की सुरक्षा कर लो, 4 आदमी मुख्यमंत्री के बंगले पे चले जाओ, अच्छा 2 आदमी हमारे बंगले पे आ जाओ. That kind, the force has just been frittered away.
So they were not really dedicated for a particular cause.
The manpower was trained, but it has not been utilized in a strategic to achieve a strategic objective.
Okay. In fact, there's also a report which says that out of 425 sanctioned police stations in Chhattisgarh, only 403 exists, out of which only 161 don't have vehicles. Many police stations in these highly sensitive areas are half-starved, as policemen prefer not to have postings there. Nearly 10,000 vacancies have fallen short in Chhattisgarh police.
And I will just add, 14 police stations have no telephone.
14 police stations have no telephones. What sort of a scenario are we living in? We're talking about anti-Naxal operations. The basics are not in place. The infrastructure, the manpower is not in place. How are we really going to, have a comprehensive, forget about development initiatives, the infrastructure, the basics are not there.
Ma'am, I'll tell you one thing, as Prakash Singh sir pointed out, the local police gets the maximum local intelligence. We have to first accept that. See, I'll give you an example of Punjab 1991 Operation Rakshak. The army and the police were operating together. The police always had the local intelligence. Punjab police took over from the army, and they did a job, as we all know, good, bad, whatever they did it, and the terrorism has ended. In Jammu Kashmir also, the local police operates with the Indian army. They don't operate as a separate parallel, but they have very good local intelligence operations and units to get information at the local level. Same will happen, you will succeed only in Chhattisgarh when you have a local police unit attached with the CRPF permanently to gather that local int. वो किसी चाय वाले के पास जाता है चाय पीने, he gets to know something, there is a movement, then he sees something. He's usually in civilian clothes. He probably could be a chai wala out there, could be a seller. See, CRPF has opened these canteens in these remote areas in the past 2 years, where local people come and buy stuff. A lot of local information exchange at
so overall, factors, if one really has to assess the several factors which actually, leading to repeated attacks and killing of Jawans. Of course, one you pointed out was lack of leadership. If one talks about the leader at the helm of affairs is not there, 50 days, more than 50 days, and there is still no, the post of Director General in the CRPF is vacant. Then there's also lack of proper training, infrastructure, manpower, and lack of coordination between the police forces and the CRPF forces. Also non-following of SOPs, because standard operating procedure, and this is something which always keeps coming back. In every attack which we discuss, the first thing that comes out is the standard operating procedures were not followed. What are these SOPs?
See, these are certain procedures laid down for the police forces to follow in times of crisis and in times of their normal operations. This is one part of it. But Chhattisgarh, unlike any other state, has had the luxury of enjoying political stability. We have a present CM is there from 2003 continuously.
Right.
Someone should ask him also. Sir, you've been in a helm of affairs. What have you done? What have you achieved? See, unless there is accountability at the political level, at the administrative level, and at the operational level,
Right.
the force should also be asked, the administrative officer should be, and everyone should be accounted for.
Right.
Unless we work in a common this thing.
Accountability should be fixed, be it at the administration level or be it at the police level.
Yes, accountability has to be fixed. Every time there is a disaster, after all, whatever has gone wrong needs to be analyzed and accountability should be fixed. In this particular case, you see, they say it's a road opening party. Today's one newspaper says they were having lunch together at it.
Right.
Now, that obviously is against the SOP. There should be no bunching of men in an operational area. It's a very basic principle.
Right.
And a road opening party means, between every two individual, there is a fair amount of distance. And even if you have to have lunch, yes, by God, I think everyone should have carried his lunch packet. It's not that you are, holidaying in a camp, that you sit together and have.
And what about the quick response team? Because even if something like this happened, where was the QRT? Because that's
that will take time, ma'am. But the point is, why do you make yourself a vulnerable target by bunching together?
Right.
If 20-30 people are having their lunch together, you're inviting trouble.
Right. So, non-following of SOPs, was that also the big reason because of which yesterday's attack happened? The fact that SOPs, you are supposed to move in small groups and not really bunch together in one group, that makes you all the more vulnerable to such attacks. Time now for me to slip into a short break. Next, when we come back, we'll also try and understand the larger development initiatives which are required in these Naxal-affected regions and what more needs to be done. Why, in the first place, Naxalism is thriving? What are the reasons behind that? If at all they have popular appeal, what makes them so much popular, be it the Forest Rights Act or be it several such initiatives which the government has taken in the past? Why is it not working on ground? We'll try and explore all these questions on the other side of this break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You are watching Insight and we are discussing the rising Naxal menace. So what explains Naxal's expanding hold? Do Naxals hope to achieve an egalitarian society through violent means? Jawans of the 74th Battalion of the Central Reserve Police Force were overseeing the construction of a road in Chhattisgarh's Sukma yesterday afternoon when about 300 Naxals ambushed them with AK-47 guns. 25 soldiers, including the company commander, died and 5 are in critical condition. The Naxalites have been on the rampage, and since the past decade, Naxalite violence has claimed many lives. In 2008, Maoists killed 59 police personnel. In 2009, Naxals killed 79 police personnel. In 2010, Naxals killed 144 police personnel. In 2012, Maoists killed 6 CRPF Jawans and 8 were left injured. On May 25, 2013, 25 leaders from the Congress party were killed in a Maoist attack in Darba Valley in Chhattisgarh. On July 2, 2013, the Superintendent of Police for Pakur, Jharkhand and 4 other police officials were killed in an attack by Naxals in Dumka. In 2014, Naxals killed 21 police personnel in Chhattisgarh. On March 12, 2017, 12 CRPF Jawans were killed in a Maoist attack in insurgency-hit Sukma district in Chhattisgarh. And yesterday, 27 personnel of the CRPF were killed in attack at Chhattisgarh's Sukma. Multiple factors from leadership failure to loopholes in the functioning of the security forces have led to the death of several security personnel in last so many years. The most unfortunate part is that despite repeated incidents, no lessons are being learned. The state and its citizens are detached, and it is this detachment trauma that reinforces the Maoist insurgency. Administrators have not succeeded in reaching out to constituencies, nor have they granted citizens